Hello, everyone. Welcome to Maximize Excellence. We have another episode, and today I am very honored and very excited about our guest today because we are going to dive into how to achieve operational excellence. And I'm honored to have, I'm honored to have Amanda Russo from Cornerstone Paradigm Consulting with us today. Let me share with you a little bit about her. And from there, I'm going to let her open up and talk a little bit about herself so you guys can get to know her pretty quickly. And then from there, we're going to dive into a really good conversation again about achieving operational excellence. So Amanda is pretty much a results-oriented chief operating officer. I want to say she's also founder of this company. And she focuses on business process improvement as a specialist with expertise in delivering analytical and data-driven solutions that effectively propel organizational success. I like that. I like propelling organizational success. We're going to dive into that. Yeah, through a collaborative approach and extensive experience spanning various industries, possessing comprehensive knowledge of end-to-end process improvement, process engineering, system migration, and cost reduction, Amanda is able to take you from process improvement to prosperity. And she's going to dive into that in just a little bit. But before we do, welcome everyone. And please join me in welcoming Amanda Russo.
Thank you so much, Lori. I appreciate it. Excited to be here.
Great news. Well, I want to dive in first and really talk about, because a lot of times virtually people don't feel connected to people. So let's let people connect to you. Tell people about your journey, about how you didn't necessarily have a mentor along the way until you were a little bit more into your career and what that did for you at that time.
Yeah, it's funny. So the seed for me was planted. I was really just a kid and, a teenager working at, I don't want to say a silly job because it wasn't a silly job, but, a job as a teenager. And as I, worked there and I gained their trust and I got more involved with their business. Both of them are first generation Americans and we're kind of having a little bit of trouble navigating. And so I was able to kind of jump in and help them out. I also learned about something, now I know what it's called, but at the time I thought, oh, that's genius. It's called rolling inventory, where, I didn't know that's what it was called. And it's actually an actual strategy, but yeah, so I would say that that's where the seed was planted. But throughout my entire career, frankly, throughout my entire life, I've always been that go-to person where you need advice, you need to know how to do something, you need to know how to fix something, you want to, you need a sounding board. I was always that person, whether I wanted to be or not. And I just, I kind of, put all the pieces of this puzzle together and here we are. I didn't have a mentor, which, maybe I hope to be a part of that change, but I didn't have a mentor to sort of show me the ropes or how to get into this or what it's even called, or, I didn't have a champion in my corner. And so there was a lot of trial and error and a lot of error on that part. And so, yeah, I mean, it's been a wild ride. It's been fun. I'm still learning. I think we learn every day. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of my journey. I had a mentor much later. I already was in business for a couple of years. And I got a mentor. But it was much later. And I think mentors could have really changed, frankly, the entire trajectory of my career.
So with mentors as a foundation for you for success and growth and learning, and with this company, when did you establish Cornerstone? When did it begin?
So I established this company on a Friday in March 17th, 2017. It was a Friday. The Thursday before, I had a conversation with my first client that I didn't even know would be a client. And they were international. Mm-hmm. And had asked if I would start a business because they could only pay an entity, which I knew that. I didn't know that they were international, but I knew that they could only pay an entity. And that's kind of how it happened. It was very serendipitous, frankly.
Love it. And it sounds like it was based on trust as well. If this individual asked you to go ahead and move forward, was willing to wait for you to get that done and shift into that dynamic.
Yeah.
Pretty
It was
amazing.
wild. Really wild.
Pretty amazing.
Yes.
So your company, though, is very effective at uncovering inefficient systems, manual workarounds, and siloed data. Tell me about those types of services and why they're critical for companies.
Yeah, I mean, it's not unusual. Frankly, I've never walked into a company and thought, oh, this place is perfect, right? There's always areas of opportunity, whether big or small, there's always going to be areas of opportunity. We just happen to specialize in inefficiencies. So increasing the bottom line by way of, identifying inefficiencies and improving those. We do something that's not really all that unique, but I think it's a little bit of I don't say a dying art because it's not, but I think folks are not going as granular as we, often go. Process and technology stack mapping. We're one of the few. I don't really know anyone else who does technology stack mapping. But we do both process and technology stack mapping, which somewhat differentiates us. And, and that's kind of where we start by understanding where you are today. And then we'll craft a plan to get you to where you want to go, but we can't answer questions about what's wrong until we know how you get from one day to the next today. Right. So, yeah.
Right. Excellent. Yeah. So most leaders tell us that they know what the issues are and that their businesses, they can do it themselves, right? We got this. Yeah. So what do you bring to the table that they may not have?
Yeah. So it's funny. Someone came up with this quote. I can't take I can't take credit for it. It's genius. I mean, it's absolutely genius. But I think she said it best, and she said, "You can't read the label from inside the jar." So any leader that tells me they can do it in-house or they have, it's certified specialists in-house. I don't want to say the name of the strategy because I don't want hate mail, but like they have people in-house that do this, or they have certified continuous improvement in-house. It is very, very hard to do this in-house and to remain
unbiased.
Yeah. And set aside your own agenda and set aside the fact that someone might not like this one and, all the other things that sort of play into this. It's really hard to do that in-house. And also you're so close to it. So, my team and I have seen the same things hundreds of times. So we may borrow a strategy that we use for a company in a totally different sector, right? So it's about like the diverse experience, the broad, vast experience of external, professionals. So,
and I love how you customize. I love your core value of impartiality. So this is kind of in this bucket here, and that you absolutely put it out there. This is one of our core values, definitely.
Yes.
So it addresses this problem that you might come across with organizations.
Yeah.
So go deeper and talk about the challenges that you see in businesses today when it comes to operations and culture.
Yeah. So I think a lot of the times business leaders believe that culture has a lot to do with, free pizza parties or, free food or free lunch or whatever it might be, or ping pong tables, or I just learned what a kegerator is, right? Like if you think about some of the co-working spaces, today, they have all these bells and whistles and gadgets and whatever, and it becomes a cool place to work. But is it? Right? So I think that's what leaders sort of categorize, culture as a cool place to work. This is a cool place to work. But really, culture in general, and again, I only come at things from an operational perspective, so I don't do the stuff like the things that you guys do. But operationally speaking, culture, and by the way, I'm not, saying that having a ping pong table or a kegerator or whatever else you want to put in the office is not fun. It's fine. Those things are great. But culture is really how you get from one day to the next. How do people get stuff done around here? If you are not setting people up in general with the right tools, the right resources, it doesn't matter if you have, you know, ping pong tables, kegerators in my office. It doesn't matter because it's not about the fun solely. It's more about how do we get things done.
Absolutely.
So I think it's more about like focusing on the running of the business. If people are successful in their roles, the rest of it is fantastic. The rest of it is great, but we gotta get the running of the business, under control. Give people tools and resources because they really tend to like what they do. They take a lot of pride in their work, but if they can't do it successfully, that's frustrating, and it leads to a whole host of other things that I'm sure you guys also see, right? You see probably a ton of it.
All the time, every day, all the time. And there's a factor of climate as well that plays into the culture, that plays into engagement, that plays into, right? And I could keep going. It's just, and it starts from when you start the company and you establish the values and the mission and the vision, and all the way back through. So it doesn't matter when you come into a company to work, correct? It's got to be assessed. It's got to be looked at.
It's got to be assessed. It's got to be looked at. It's got to be a conversation.
Yes.
I think that's the other thing folks tend to miss, especially the ones who have people in-house, right? They give me that line, they have it in-house. The folks need to start having a conversation with the doers of the work, right? Like, even if you are a supervisor, even if you stand over someone and hover, and breathe on them while they're working every single day, it still doesn't mean that you know how they do things, even if you're watching it with your eyes, because they have also already internalized and established their own process on how they're going to get this done within the 8-hour period or however many hours they work. And that's the thing that you need to uncover is what systems did they come up with to help them be successful in their role, right? Like, so it's about having a conversation with the doers of that work, figuring out how they do things, why they do things the way they do things, and can we make this systematically better across the board for every user, for every agent, for every whatever it is. It's not to get people in trouble. It's about how can we standardize this, make it better for everyone, help everybody be successful.
I love it. I love it. And from a tactical perspective, that's absolutely needed. Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. So why is it important to get to the root cause? And I love that you use this root cause terminology when it comes to operations. Talk about this.
Yeah, I mean, we all look at a problem and we might notice the obvious, right? And for us, some of those obvious things are symptoms. As a leader, you're removed. You are. If you're a leader, then you should be removed. You are removed from the process, from the day-to-day. And so oftentimes there is an assumption, which happens a lot, of why something is happening and what needs to happen to fix it. So I believe Lori is online shopping. That's why she's not able to process more widgets, paper, whatever, whatever it might be. Or I believe Amanda is fighting with her partner, whatever it might be, right? Like you have this story that you made up and in your mind it happened, it's true. Or we're not fast enough because of this. And the problem is that you're only talking about an assumption. You're talking about something that you truly believe is the problem, and you know how to fix it. The challenge with getting to the root cause is we have to toss aside, and you might not be wrong, by the way. I don't want to say like you're automatically wrong. It's just about coming in, fresh set of eyes, right? We're from the outside in, fresh set of eyes. We come in, we kind of see all the different things, even symptoms that you don't know are symptoms. And getting to the root cause is really addressing truly what's going on. Could be culture. It could have nothing to do with Lori online shopping. It could be you're hovering and, and she's terrified, or it could be a number of things. But getting to the root cause of it is like, saying I have a headache, that must be a brain tumor. No, you might just have a headache. You might need glasses. You might need, right? It's a number of things. So it's about really just truly getting to the root cause of the problem and resolving it once and for all, as opposed to assuming, throwing money at it, throwing bodies at it, throwing technology at it, taking away bodies, right? Firing people. Like it's just like, don't do anything. Just first figure out what is going on first, and then maybe.
Yeah, and I think there are both tactical and behavioral components and factors definitely that impact and affect. And also the assumption factor that you talked about based on beliefs is truly founded in gossip, and which is truly founded in common day, all day long, every day, the triggers of distortion.
Yeah.
And that in itself is often where people get burnt out or they get rusted out. They disengage or become unengaged.
Yeah.
And that's where I think you absolutely identify the inefficiency and the cost factor that is unfortunately decreasing in the organization. So I love how we marry one another, definitely. And also, we're talking about things that are very, very common and very real in an organization. And operationally, if you've got a disengaged, unengaged, you and I both know it's costing the company quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So,
and even they're already looking for another job. And so,
normally, or they're just avoiding completely.
Collecting a paycheck. We call, there's a lot of like, jargon out there for quiet quitters, quiet stayers, right? All these other things. And I would say before we even get to quiet quitters, quiet staying, loud stayers, all the other, silly buzzwords that are out there, these are problems that have existed since the beginning of time, right? Like this is not a new thing.
Based
Let's
on
just figure out what's going on. A lot of that disgruntledness from the operations. They're not being heard. They don't feel valued. You're giving them a notebook and a pencil and asking them to do digital marketing. You're right. So it's like you're not giving them what they need to be successful, and they find it frustrating.
Yeah. So do you think businesses can be successful without a chief operating officer or an operations professional running the helm?
I do. I think, operations, having someone full-time on staff.
Yeah.
I don't think is totally necessary. For some organizations, it's expensive, right?
Right.
But I do think having maybe on a retainer or something where they come in quarterly or whatever it might be, semi-annually, and review with your team is imperative. Because this is not a one and done exercise. And if you can't, and that's also very normal. Like a lot of organizations don't have a COO, or they have a hybrid COO, CFO, CTO, right? They have all these like hybrid, let's be 1,000 things at the same time, which is also ineffective and not transferable skills. But that's probably another show, right? Like you can't have a CFO who's giving COO advice. Those two things are not transferable. I don't care what you say. They are not transferable. Someone who is doing financial oversight, evaluating the business, understanding the bottom line knows very little about technology and everything else. So I don't recommend doing hybrid in any circumstance, but I'm sure I'm going to get some hate mail about that. But
no, it's common, especially nowadays. It's common in startups. It's common in small business. It's common. It's very common.
And so I would say, get somebody either on a retainer, they come in every 6 months or every quarter or whatever it might be, whatever you can work out with them, and really someone who's going to not tell you what you want to hear,
Mm-hmm.
but really have those hard conversations with you. I don't think you have to not be eloquent about it, right? There is an eloquent way to say, look, you really have to change, or we really have to change this thing. So I don't think it needs to be a difficult relationship, but you want someone who's going to tell you, this is what's going on. We really need to address this.
Yeah.
That's when I partner with, let's say, the CFO and say, what is the budget we have allocated for this? No, really, right? Because they're understanding from a financial perspective. I'm looking at things from an operations perspective, the running of it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, so I don't think you need to have full time, but yeah, retainer.
Yeah, it goes back to when you design the organization. What do those functionalities look like? What are the roles and responsibilities? Do they align to the company philosophies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Yeah, that's great. So why so much pushback when it comes to change?
Yeah. I mean, I think I think first of all, there has to be a level of emotional intelligence when you're doing this kind of work. Change is hard for everyone, even the change that you want. If you want to lose 25 pounds, if you want to gain 25 pounds, changing the way that we feel comfortable is hard. It's scary.
And in organizations, because we've become, there's conditioning in process. There's conditioning in those outcomes as well. So what do you recommend when you're coming in and you're consulting with your clients? What are some of the high level ideas and thoughts that you bring to the table for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, it's about including everyone in that conversation, even people that you might not feel are as important, to adopt the change, the administrative assistants, the folks who are doing, like, let's say, non-clinical, non-technical work.
Right.
You include everybody. You never know what they're bringing to the table, by the way, because you'd be really surprised what someone who's doing something that's maybe not clinical and not technical, what they have to say. And it can be really impressive. And so I think it's about including everybody in the conversation, to making sure that you're managing the message. So it's a buzzword now, but change management. So ensuring that everybody understands what the purpose of this is. Because if you don't manage the message, the story is going to evolve, right? It's going to be, we're getting fired. Everybody's getting fired. This one hates me. I'm scared. She's going to interview me. Like when I come in, I'm actually not very tall, but when I come in, it's very funny to see how afraid people are of me. I'm like, I'm your voice. I'm not here to, and so it's about managing the message, about them understanding what's the objective here. We're here to make your job better. We're here to make your life easier. I'm not coming in here to fire everybody, which I think, often is a very common practice among some practitioners in my space, is let's just fire, let's cut headcount. And I don't necessarily think that's the right approach either. So I mean, I think it's about managing the message, having a level of emotional intelligence, understanding that, maybe your more mature population might feel a little uncomfortable with new technology that's outside of their normal, right? So planning on spending additional time with them, planning on, an additional lunch and learn, an additional one-on-one, checking in with them, going through it, making sure people feel good about what's going on. And then even after it happens, after we roll it out, checking in, spending time, right? So even though those projects take a little bit longer, you ultimately, the company will win. Right. So just, being aware,
Yeah, change is big. And I want to say from an operational perspective as well, things are evolving and changing every day, period. Whether or not you change out a system, whether or not you truly do change, process, because more than likely there might be attrition of some sort. More than likely, one of the leaders may have gotten in an accident that day in their car and they're not able to show up. Believe it or not, those little things create impacts, and it does permeate the organization in the most bizarre ways. So being able to be resilient and have agility in those types of situations, and understand that change can be on the continua. It can be great change. It can be very small, rapid change. And being able to develop an organization that is resilient, that is agile, that is flexible. And so operationally, it can continue. It has flow. It has impact. Yeah. And so,
what's funny, Lori, is we tell our clients and their teams, try to focus on what we're going to gain rather than what we're about to lose. So it is more about what you're going to gain. And sometimes that will ease the anxiety because we shift, or we attempt to shift their focus. I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to lose the system. I'm going to lose the thing I know I feel comfortable with. But it is more about what we're going to gain in this exercise. You're going to understand what your team members are also doing. You're in this together kind of thing. It becomes an even more collegial environment because the change is happening to everyone, not just you. It's about what we're going to gain.
Right. Yeah, that state of curiosity. And that's another one of your core values, as well as inclusiveness. So these things, not only you share them outwardly with your clients, but they're core values of your organization itself. And so that's demonstrated, it's exhibited, it's all those good things. So what can leaders do to make organizational change and adoption easier? You talked about messaging, but talk more about that, and then talk about the other things.
I think it's preparing a well thought out, a well prepared, a well organized plan that encompasses inclusion, encompasses a clear message, ensures that the organization is ready. So you could do a readiness assessment. And this is not, by the way, what I'm about to say is not a cheap plug, because you can use any one you want and do this however you want. But I highly encourage to stop DIYing it. Stop trying to do it in-house, because a fresh set of eyes, an outside set of eyes, can prove to be invaluable. Especially when you're rolling out change, large or small. If that project is unsuccessful, large or small, it is going to hinder any future projects of change for an unimaginable amount of time. People remember unsuccessful projects. So plan it really well. We've seen it so many times, Lori, when I've gone into some large companies, and the attitudes, the clicking of the nail, like they're ready for this. It's like, let's rumble now, right? Like they know what's going to happen. People have lied to them before. They're tired of it. It's like they feel like it's yet another thing added to their plate because you have had so many unsuccessful failed. Let's just use that word. It's a failed project in the past. It becomes exhausting. So the DIYing it, I understand. Believe me, I get it probably more than anyone. You want to save money. You don't have the budget. Unsuccessful projects are very, very expensive from a cultural perspective, from an operations perspective, from a bottom line perspective. I mean, we could keep going from a patient or a customer experience perspective. So I highly encourage, try not to DIY it and do your homework. Working with some of the big name organizations is not always the right answer. And not that they're not the right answer, but I also highly encourage, ask questions. Don't
Mm-hmm.
hire someone because they look like you or they don't look like you or you're whatever. Like, ask really good questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't go off of someone's really big marketing budget or well-known name. Ask the questions. I mean, because I don't want to get, into it, but like, it's not always going to be these really big recognizable names. No one's ever gotten fired for buying IBM, right? That's that old saying. Today you will, because it's expensive and it's probably not appropriate for you, and you're making like these blanket purchases or blanket, hires, and you're not doing the work. You got to do a little bit of work. Yeah.
It's got to be aligned.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's got, all those decisions have to be
Yeah.
aligned. Absolutely. All right. And what do you mean when you say you are the voice for the people in an organization?
Oh, yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that.
I mean, I kind of alluded to it a little bit before, but yeah, I mean, we come in, right, and a part of our agreement, which is quite new actually, is we actually don't want to spend an enormous amount of time, certainly not in the beginning, with the stakeholders, which is probably illegal somewhere in the universe here. A lot of companies will say, oh, yes, we'll get the key stakeholders in the room and we'll, put this on the wall and we don't really want to spend too much time with key stakeholders. We care what they have to say. We want their input, but we are the people's voice. So we're solving the problem. We're in here to solve the problems for the doers, for the people who are the face of the organization, who are facing off with your customer, who are making the widgets literally in the warehouse, who are talking to your clients or whatever it might be, the patients or whatever it is that you do. They are the face of your firm. They are doing the actual work. You have no idea what they do. You might have, the gist, right? Like, of how they do what they do, but we're not here to solve a gist. We're not here to understand the gist. I need to understand literally, why do you open up these computer programs in this sequence? Is there a reason for that? Oh, because they crash if you don't. I want to know that. The key stakeholder is not going to know that. Yeah. And if they do, they're not going to understand, what, so we're really here we really go in to solve root cause. Root cause happens with the person or people doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's lovely.
Yeah.
And when it comes to systems, when it comes to process, when it comes to people, getting that aligned, having that kind of flow, getting that kind of succinctness, and not everybody has, step 1, step 2, step 3. Sometimes it's customized, sometimes it's bespoke.
Yes.
So in those in those types of systems and processes, how is that different from those kind of industrialized type mechanism type processes?
Yeah. So we're not here to reinvent the wheel. I say to the clients that we're agnostic. So I say to our clients, we're never going to cover how. Rather, we're never going to tell them what to sell, where to sell it, what they should be doing, how they, we're going to help them with how. If you want to manufacture and ship t-shirts from the moon, is it possible? Absolutely. Right. Like, we're going to do the how. And so you still have to be the expert at whatever it is that you do. We're just going to come in. We're going to look for operational gaps. And the operation, because you're the expert in the widget. You're the one making sensors for the plane. You're the one doing the brain surgery on a patient that has a tumor. You're the whatever it is that you do, you're still the expert at that. Hopefully you're very good at it, because we're not going to cover the what. I'm not going to tell you how to do brain surgery. I'm not going to tell you how to make a widget. How? That's a different story. We cover the how. We run the business. And so when we're going in and we're kind of digging through how you're doing things, we have seen this process or a version of this process, 55 different ways. And so we might say, actually, you make widgets, fantastic. We saw this same exact scenario in a doctor's office, and this is how we could re-engineer it. This is what we could
Love
offer.
it.
We know that this can be automated. We know that this can be, we know we can write some code and put this in whatever system, right? And so it's about our diverse experience in fixing the how, not necessarily the what.
So we often find, even from our perspective of human resources and talent management, that standard operating procedures aren't necessarily maximized in organizations. They're not utilized, nor sometimes are they even developed or designed or created.
Right.
Do you find that common across the board? And when you do, what are some of what's some of your thought leadership around that?
Yeah, I mean, standard operating procedures is yet another tool to help people, give them autonomy to do their job and find the answers, but quickly. So you don't want to give them a standard operating procedure that is 95 pages and it's all copy and it's like, oh my God, you feel like you're reading like a novel, right? You don't want to do that because you're in the middle of it, right? Like it's like thumbing through, like you're going to be over there all day, right? Looking for one thing. So, there's a lot of different ways standard operating procedures can be written and executed. There are lots of software programs that can help one navigate through. It depends on the kind of company that you are, but we can automate standard operating procedures where there's a workflow in front of you and it can go through and say, okay, you're here. Now next here. After you're done with this, go here, do this. You click on the options. There are other software out there that can, it's a question. So if you call into me and you say, I want to lower my bill, and it might say, okay, well, what's your zip code? You type in, the agent types in the zip code, it'll give you an answer. Then you have another set of questions, multiple question answer, depending on what the customer, right? So there's a lot of software out there that can help automate a standard operating procedure, or you can do it the traditional way. But the traditional way is often connected to a process map.
Right.
So it can't just be, I wake up one day and this is how I want it to be done. I'm going to write, a 10-page, this is how we're going to do it. You have to back that up with a process. And then ensure that that process works and is faster and the most efficient from the user's perspective, and then write a standard operating procedure.
How often should people revisit those?
I would say semi-annually. Honestly, semi-annually. Sometimes annually is okay as well. And revisiting them doesn't mean you have to spend 6 weeks looking at the thing and whatever. Like it's, okay, guys, are we doing it this way? Who's not doing it this way? Why? So revisiting it could be a couple of hours exercise or a survey or, there's lots of ways to go about how do we revisit this. Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about process. We've talked about our process improvement. We've talked a lot about the management and the communications and messaging side of this.
Yeah.
You've talked about procedures. I want you to dive into continuity and continuity planning and how critical it is for businesses.
Yeah. I mean, not that I want to rehash what we just came out of, but I think, even aside from a pandemic, I think the last 10 years or so have taught us quite a bit. Natural and accidental disasters are happening. They're happening more frequently. They're more creative. I mean, who would have thought, outside of places that are notorious for flooding, who would have thought that, flooding, extreme weather events could take out cities? Planning for those kinds of events is far more regular than it ever was. And I think if you are not planning for a disaster or planning for alternative ways for your business to survive, whether that's working remote, working in another, working virtually, in your location, your residence, working virtually. Maybe it's near shoring or offshoring or whatever that looks like for you. I think if you are not thinking ahead, I think you're setting yourself up for failure, because
Mm-hmm.
it's not a matter anymore of if, it's when.
Mm-hmm.
Who could have predicted the pandemic? Who could have predicted these, you know, weather events that are just amazing, right? Just no words for it. The snow events in Texas that are taking out multiple towns at a time, and it's just incredible. And I think if you're not thinking about that, or you think it's not going to happen to you, I think you're going to find yourself in a really difficult situation.
Yeah, getting back to that resiliency and risk management and all those things. So move into, and we'll begin to wrap up after this, but move into implementation and the importance of managing implementation and also the partnership that's required when implementing. So talk about those things, because these are all, by the way, to everyone that's listening and going to be listening as well. These are critical components of Amanda's business.
Yeah.
Not only is she and her team experts at this, but when you're talking about operations, these are critical topics, definitely. So
Yeah.
talk about implementation, the implementation management and
Yeah.
the direct partnership. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think once we get to that point and we've decided collectively, we're experts, but collectively with leaders, what you have the appetite to change, what we finally decided on, right? There is a lot more planning that still needs to happen. We need to plan on scrubbing legacy data, re-engineering the processes after the new implementation. What does that look like? Implementing the new piece of technology, testing it, connecting with the CTO, right, and the head of IT, and ensuring that continuity is linked up there, and the system is secure and not able to be penetrated. And so we get someone to do pen testing if possible. Rolling out the new piece of software before it goes live, everybody has to get trained on it. Ensuring that we're on site to be the support after it goes live.
Yeah.
Migrating the old data into the new systems, right? Formatting it. That goes all with the testing and in the testing phase. So there's like a lot of planning that needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, again, if you aren't working with someone who really knows how to do this, I think it can be a very long journey that leaves itself open for a lot of work after the fact, or a lot of errors.
Discouragement. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've seen it. Yeah, definitely have seen it.
But it goes back to the change management. It goes back to including people. And even when we're training folks, they're navigating the system. They're looking for their thing, right? Like, where is the initial, whatever, so where's the button? And so we have to be there to answer those questions. And so you really have to know what you're doing, what you're talking about, what the system looked like before. What were they doing before? If I know that you were using scratch paper or you were using Microsoft Word because you're not great at spelling, I'm going to say, hey, by the way, there's spell check, because I'm not going to single you out. There's spell check within the text, right? Or whatever it might be. So it's about like ensuring that you're really there for the team who's doing, being a resource on site, and planning it. It's got to be planned. It's got to be communicated. It's a lot. I think folks just think, we'll buy a new thing and we'll implement it. And there's a lot of lifting to do. So work with someone.
And once you get all that done and you've been successful in implementation, there's ongoing support that is required as well. And it makes me think about from our perspective, one simple thing that happens all the time. They bring in a new employee, and in their onboarding, they
Yeah.
forget to include operations in the overview of the company.
Yeah.
And they forget to bring in one of the managers from operations to sit with that new employee,
Yeah.
help them understand the impacts, to help them understand how important these systems and processes are. So talk about some of the, I mean, that's just one of the many
Yeah.
ongoing supports that you do, but talk about that.
Yeah. So we actually also cover the onboarding
Yeah.
because it's incredibly important. And you and I both know, certainly probably better than I do, right? That onboarding, when a new employee starts at a company, and everybody watching can probably relate to this at one job or the other in their lifetime, is you started a new company and you're kind of fending for yourself.
Been there, done
Yeah,
that.
I've been there. I've been there many a times, and it's really scary, and you're spending an enormous amount of time in the early days with all the paperwork you have to fill out and all the systems, and you got to learn the acronyms, and you got to learn, and you have to set up a meeting with Lori, and you have to find her calendar, and you got to, you don't really know who she is, so it's a lot of like, you kind of start off on the wrong foot
Right.
because you don't know any of the systems, you don't know any of the processes. You know what we do here, but not really, because you don't really work here, right? You just
Right.
started yesterday, and so we cover that as well. And there's
Yeah.
a way to make that process a little bit more smooth, automating standard operating procedures.
Right.
The onboarding process can be just a couple of days where people feel a lot more comfortable because there's something walking them through step by step by step. So we cover some of that as well, because you're already starting off someone on the wrong foot if you're like, welcome, good luck. Like
And I'm going to bring it full circle when you talked about at the very beginning, just having a mentor.
Yeah.
To kind of be there for you. That is part of that. I mean, that's both human resource
Yeah.
and operations. And so it's something that is absolutely a great tool, a great resource to have in operation to help with operational excellence over time. And of course, you talked about those check-ins. You talked about, reviewing your SOPs every 6 months, every year, those kinds of things as well. Yeah, Amanda, this has been great, very insightful, very specific and detailed oriented in regards to operational excellence and how to achieve that. So I'm curious, is there a way for people out there to connect with you guys and to be able to understand if they're in need of these types of services, or if they're in a state of readiness for that?
Yeah, so we actually have a number of resources. We offer almost like a survey. It's at no cost. Answer a couple of questions. It's basically about the kind of industry that you're in, if you're a product or a service, and so on and so forth, and what things you might be up against in the business that you might be inquiring about. And we offer a free strategy, a free business strategy after just answering a few questions. So you can take the survey if you sort of want to just dip your toe in the water and, you're not sure yet. We have a really robust blog. That's another place that you can look on our website, which I didn't share yet because I feel like you can probably read my mind. No, it's cpcchangeagent.com. And we also offer free ebooks. And so there's a lot of resources available to help folks that are just kind of dipping their toe in the water and they're not really sure. Something we started offering a couple of years ago is an initial consultation, a 1-hour initial consultation. If you want to have a conversation, you're not sure if you need to work with someone, you're not even sure if you can, let us know what's going on. We're happy to have that conversation with you and go from there. There's no pressure. It's never a hard sell for us because we can't help someone who doesn't want the help. So head there, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I usually check all my messages. I'm really good at answering comments on our posts. So yeah, you can always connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty accessible. Yeah.
Amanda, this has been great, very insightful. I want to say thank you on behalf of our audience and also just of our company, on behalf of my partner and I, for you to collaborate on these kinds of topics and help leaders improve. This is about maximizing excellence and effectiveness in organizations, and it does require functionalities to come together.
Yes.
It does require those of us that have special and unique areas of focus to collaborate and work better together. So I just want to thank you on behalf of my company and our leadership to do this with us on our podcast. You brought some great information and energy. Your energy is professional. It is dynamic.
Yeah.
She's a lot of fun. I've had numerous conversations with Amanda recently, and she's a lot of fun and very, very intelligent and bright and an expert in this field of what we do in our companies. So I just want to say thank you, Amanda.
I appreciate you, Lori. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be a resource. I had a great time. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Well, everybody out there, I just want to say we've got more coming down the pipeline in regards to maximizing excellence. Our next podcast, believe it or not, is going to be, and by the way, all of our guests are amazing, but I've been working hard to get a few professors from universities to come on and talk about their very specific area of focus when it comes to a scholarly perspective of leadership. And I landed another one, and it was at the referral of a dear, dear friend and advisor, mentor, coach. I could probably put him in all three buckets, and that's Tom Morris, who's our modern day philosopher. He is our modern day Aristotle. He is our modern day philosopher. And he referred me to Aaron Simmons, who is a professor of philosophy at Furman University. And he recently just wrote a book, and it is called Camping with Kierkegaard. And you guys, you got to come. He's going to talk about making choices, taking risks, being alone and silent, and the power we have within that. He's going to be talking about cultivating relationships and finding our calling by facing our vulnerability and being open and curious. And he's got a concept around faithfulness and not from so much a religious perspective, but from a perspective of humanity in living a life of risk with direction. So I hope you join me on the 6th of November, because Dr. Aaron Simmons is going to be on, and we're going to be talking about maximizing faithfulness. And then after Dr. Simmons on the 13th, we've got Marisa Zalabak, and she's going to be coming from a perspective of coherence and critical thinking, and bringing in the new modern economy and talking about how we can maximize excellence from that perspective. Following Marisa, we have Erica Allen Esquire from D'Angelo Law, and she's going to be talking specifically and very deeply about trademarks and maximizing trademarks in our companies. So I think those next three lineups are going to be very strong. I know they're kind of odd and different from one another, but again, they're all impact us. These are things and factors that impact our business on a day-to-day basis. So we're excited about the opportunity to maximize excellence with you all. So thank you again, everyone. And again, thank you, Amanda. I appreciate you, and I appreciate this opportunity to share your expertise.
Thank you so much, Lori. Thanks for having me.
All righty, stay on, and I'll let everybody go, and everybody have a wonderful, wonderful day. And remember to maximize excellence.
Yes.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Maximize Excellence. Visit our events page on our website for details on upcoming podcasts, and visit our YouTube channel to listen to past episodes. And remember to ask yourself at the end of each day, did I do my best to maximize excellence today?